English teacher would be my best way to secure some kind of visa so I could live in Japan. However, things didn't quite go to plan. There was one big problem: my face. Next idea, this expectation of what someone from England should look like. I applied for so many English teaching jobs and got rejected time after time after time for the same reason. Self-run English schools that are run by foreigners didn't want to employ me as a teacher at their school just because I didn't have the right look. And when I asked why, they said that they're
Konnichiwa minasan, kyo desu. From the YouTuber hiding in my room, my experience teaching English in Japan. It's the video we're gonna react to today, but before that, guys, just make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel.
Ever since the age of 16, I had a burning desire to live in Japan, one of my favorite countries in the entire world. But I knew Japan wouldn't just let me live there without providing some kind of value to society. So I thought to myself, what can I provide to Japanese people? And then I realized I could use my native English speaking abilities to help Japanese people learn English. I thought becoming an English teacher would be my best way to secure some kind of visa so I could live in Japan. However, things didn't quite go to plan. There was one big problem: my face. If you've been listening to the video and you don't know what I look like, then you might be surprised to find out that I don't exactly look like your stereotypical Englishman. You see, when applying for English teaching jobs in Japan, they usually ask you what your nationality is, and when you tell them that you are British, they usually automatically assume that you look a certain way.
Caucasian,
and even though England is a pretty multicultural city, Japanese people kind of have this fixed idea, this expectation of what someone from England should look like. I applied for so many English teaching jobs and got rejected time after time after time for the same reason. And that reason was I just did not look like a native English speaker.
You look
Japanese. Because I didn't fit the Japanese description of what an Englishman should look like. I found it very difficult finding English teaching jobs. Even the small-sized self-run English schools that are run by foreigners didn't want to employ me as a teacher at their school just because I didn't have the right look. And when I asked why, they said that the Japanese students preferred to have a more native-looking teacher. And even though I did my best to try and explain to them that I am a native English speaker and I had a B+ in GCSE English, they still weren't interested just because of the way I looked. So I decided to try out private tutoring. There's certain websites where you can create a profile, and Japanese people who are interested in learning English will sign up to the website and browse through the list of teachers. And a few Japanese people did contact me and signed up for a trial lesson, but when I met up with them face to face, they seemed disappointed. It was like they were expecting a more native looking English speaker, probably a white person. And then I show up and they think, wait a minute, he doesn't look very English. Is he really a native English speaker? I even had one student who cancelled the lesson only 10 minutes in. She just got up and said she had to go and meet a friend, which seems like a load of rubbish. Why would you book an English lesson and then have to meet your friend only 10 minutes after it begins? I don't know exactly why she decided to cancel the lesson, but I have my suspicions. So I talked to my friends at the guest house I was staying. They were from countries like America, Europe, and they were mostly white. And they just didn't understand the problem I was having. They said stuff like, I don't understand, Daniel. I managed to find a teaching job straight away. On the very first week, I managed to find English teaching jobs and students, and it's so easy. I don't know why you're having such a hard time, Daniel. And I think it's pretty blatantly obvious what the difference was. The difference was those friends at the guest house, they fit the stereotype of what Japanese people think a native English speaker should look like. After a while, I gave up on the idea of becoming an English teacher. My dreams were crushed and my hopes were shattered, but I didn't give up. I was still determined to find some kind of employment in Japan and provide value to Japanese society. I had to resort to taking very low-paid work and working in places like convenience stores and kitchens doing washing up. One of the main topics people like to talk about a lot at the guest house was usually about jobs and money. So you'd be sitting around the table with a bunch of foreigners and they'd ask me, "So Daniel, what kind of work are you doing in Japan?" And I'd say, "I'm working at Lawson, I'm working in a kitchen." And they'd be confused. They would say, "Why are you working at those low-paid jobs when you could be an English teacher and be making 5 times more money?" It used to really annoy me actually when people kept suggesting that I should teach English, as if I hadn't tried to get an English teaching job, as if the odds weren't stacked against me just because of what my face looked like. I was utterly shocked to find out that a white German guy who spoke really good English, he managed to find an English teaching job and he wasn't even a native speaker. So in Japan, and probably in many other Asian countries, looking like a native speaker is more important than actually being a native English speaker. It's just so silly.
I agree.
So I tried my best working at the convenience store. I managed to last a few months before giving up because the hours were just too long, there was too much work, the customers were just rude, and the pay was absolutely abysmal. I decided to quit my jobs at the convenience store and the kitchen, and I never got a job in Japan ever again. I gave up on the idea of being employed, and I gave up on the idea of providing value to Japanese society. So how did I survive in Japan without a job, you might be asking? Well, to keep a long story short, I went on to Tinder and I went on a few dates, and I met this Japanese lady who was very interested in learning English. And we met up, had a few dates, and she seemed to really like me, and I thought she was pretty okay as well. One night we went to karaoke and we had some drinks, and that sparked a night of passion. She wanted me to move in with her, and she said I could stay without paying any rent, on one condition, that I help her learn English. I agreed to her conditions and I packed my bags from the guest house and moved hastily into her one-room apartment. And there we lived together for several months. It was pure bliss and happiness in the beginning. It was like a symbiotic relationship. I had a burning desire to teach English, and she had an unquenchable thirst for English vocab and grammar that burned brighter than the stars of Venus. I finally felt like I was providing value to Japanese society and to Japanese people. It wasn't quite how I imagined my English teaching career to begin in Japan. I was expecting to be standing in front of a classroom in front of dozens of people, but instead I found something much better. I got to have free cheesecake on a daily basis, plus I got free accommodation and plenty of hugs and kisses. Unfortunately, this relationship was not to last very long. The flame fizzled out almost as quickly as it was ignited. One evening she came home from work and she sat down. She had a very serious look on her face. She said to me, "Daniel, I don't think there's much more English I can learn from you." She said she met a new guy called Gareth from Canada, and she's going to be meeting him soon. And then she asked me to move out. I couldn't believe she was breaking up with me like this after we had been together for so many months. It was the longest relationship I ever had, and I felt so used and spat out. I packed my things and I left. I turned my back on her and I never saw her again. And from that day onwards, I vowed to never again teach anybody English.
Wow. I guess it's pretty dark. I don't know how I feel. I do get that desire or understand that motivation, that because I was that person at one point. As a Western person, you want to do anything you can to live in Japanese society because you love the country and you understand that in order for me to live there, I have to add something to the society. I can't just go there just to be there. I have to do something that helps Japanese society. So I get that most foreigners, they become English teachers because that's probably one of the most accepted jobs for foreigners in Japan. However, because Japan is not a multicultural country, a lot of times I believe Japanese people probably see certain countries and have a stereotypical look or have an expectation of what a person is supposed to be. So if I'm, a white person from, England, it would make sense. If I'm a white person from Australia, it makes sense. If I'm a white person from America, it's probably a bit more accepted. It makes sense. But if I'm an Asian person who looks very Japanese, and I claim I'm from these countries, of course, because Japan doesn't have multiculturalism, I guess it's harder to believe that you're actually from that country. Because if I say if I'm from America, of course people will believe me because there's a large black population in America. But if I say I'm Asian from Europe, that's probably not as well known as a demographic in Great Britain, for example. So it makes sense why a lot of companies would be like, you don't really fit the image we're looking for. It doesn't even matter that you speak English. We're thinking more of a Western looking man, not necessarily an Asian looking man. I guess me, after that point, if I've been denied so much and I really wanted to live in Japan, I would rethink other options to live in Japan. That's just me. I think that his own desire, or because he got rejected so much for not being able to teach English, it drove him kind of like, I don't want to say to madness, but to the point where he was desperate. And of course, that relationship he had, she was just looking for someone to teach her English. She wasn't looking for love or marriage or whatever. She was using you. So her proposition was, I'm gonna give you something that you want, and in return, I'll get something that I want from you, which is learn English. And of course, she probably seemed like the person who wanted to date foreigners, but it was a hard time for her because she didn't learn English. So it makes sense why she kicked you out, because she was just using you. Would I call that experience? Not really. I just think, of course, Japan, because of the nature of Japanese society, multiculturalism or multiracial environments are probably a bit still undercooked as far as understanding. So it makes sense. But at that point, I would have rethought my options and try to think of another way to head to Japan. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, also hit that bell as well to get notified whenever we post a video. Hontou, arigatou gozaimasu. Minna, ki o tsukete. Ja ne.
Last time I checked, it was up. Last time I checked, it was up.
Everything was all good just a week ago.
Last time I checked, it was up. Last time I checked, it was up.